Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves, and alongside me as ever, Chris Borden and Darren Bentley. And tonight we've got an extra special guest and one that probably needs no introduction to Burnley fans, but unusually for me, I have written one, so here we go. He presided over one of the most successful periods in Burnley's history. Not one, but two promotions from the Championship to the Premier League. An unprecedented spell of keeping the Clarets in the Premier League with one of the smallest top-flight budgets ever. European football returning to Turf Moor for the first time since the late 1960s. And of course, that training ground we've got down at Gorthorpe is all down to this man as well. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Sean Dyche. Sean, how are we?
I'm good, thanks. And after all that, they said I should have changed our style because we weren't successful enough. Go figure. Should play more football. Go figure. Could have worked that one out. No, I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Excellent stuff. We were just talking before we press record about what you've been up to, but we all know, I think it was very eagerly anticipated, but you were at the Oasis gig, so let's get the Oasis question out the way. Big fan of that show in Cardiff last week, Sean?
Yeah, fantastic. The last time I saw them was Nebworth, so I've jumped from one big gig to the other. But for a first gig, I mean, there's lots of these bands now, they're on point. But a first gig, even the people I know in the music industry often say the first couple, they had a few teething problems getting tight as a band, but they were super tight. I thought they were absolutely top draw. And to go and knock it out, I think even them guys, I imagine, even at that level of market, I bet they'd have still been a bit nervy and a bit anxious, thinking, look, we could do with this going well. Trust me, it went more than well. It was absolutely magnificent.
Definitely. Bit of a Clarets connection as well there.
Was that definitely maybe? But you're going to say definitely maybe.
I should have done. I missed that.
That would have been a good one if he went,
I missed that.
Maybe.
Definitely. Definitely maybe, but definitely there was a Clarets connection. Christian Madden, the keyboard player, is a Burnley lad and a big Clarets fan. So not a lot of people know
There's
that,
always
as a comedian once said.
There's always one, isn't there?
Exactly. There's always one.
You're never far away, are we? We've got lots to get through, so we will crack straight on. Just wanted to kind of, first of all, look at your kind of time at Burnley. What is the one thing you look at as your kind of proudest moment? What's the thing you point to?
I think there's lots of individual games and bits like that, but to be honest, the project, and I hate using that word, I don't mean that in a trendy way, but the fact that you've got to remember that all parties stood strong to the original moment of truth, which was basically being in the boardroom when it looked like we were going to get promoted the first time. We kind of had a private meeting, and I said, look, you can't go down that road but like you did before when you got in the Premier League, gave away loads of free tickets, paid loads of players loads of money, and they're still paying them off when I got there, and it all went wrong. I said, you can't do it. Well, I said, you can, and it's up to you. But I said, for me, you need to build something that's going to last years. And I said, the start is the training ground, because we had this little tiny hut, and the pitches were nowhere near up to it. And I said, the start's there. And I said, as long as we stick to the programme, you have to do the ground up anyway. Some of that is just by the Premier League rules. So you got no choice. You have to do that. So some money has to go into the ground, the technology, the wiring and all that sort of stuff, changing rooms and the like. And I said, look, for me, you've got to do something more than just throw it on the pitch. And I said, no, as long as you stand by me, I'll take the heat for on the pitch. And people do forget, by the way, we got 33 points. People think as if it was SBC, snookers by Christmas, but it wasn't. We actually were right in with the fight. So we still let it go, but I think we only spent something like 9 million or 10 million or something like that. So, but there was plenty of money in the club, and we could build a training ground. Now there's some delays with the timing of getting the training ground done, but it did get done. Now the risk with that, of quite obviously, is we went down, which there was a chance. It didn't mean we're definitely getting down, but it was going to be a fair chance that we would. So the risk is then trying to get back up. And up until Christmas, we were wobbling a little bit. For no particular reason. We weren't playing terribly. We just couldn't quite find that thing that you need. And then obviously the second half of the season speaks for itself. And all of a sudden we're re-promoted. But guess what? By then, the club are rich, or rich by Burnley standards. Yeah. They can protect the club for the next number of years. The training ground is now in process and been cleared. And all of a sudden, the club's in a whole different world, a whole different ball game. Now, I must make it clear, that's not just down to me, but there's a lot of people involved in that. And to be fair, there was times when the board wouldn't give you, the smell off their, but on the other hand, they're incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. It took a lot of strength from all concerned on that board, from Mike Garlick as chairman, through the club, the original Lee Hughes, who was really good, and then Dave Bowen came in. I had all good relationships with them. And it took a lot of strength to do that, I think, looking back. So the bigger picture is the most thing I marvel at. And also to mention as well the community side of the club, because when I got there was one community person, and me and Lee Hughes, I told him about Neil Hart, and I said, look, he'll get his teeth into it. They've done a brilliant job, not him on his own, but there was people at the Watford Football Club done a brilliant job. And I'm proud of that because by the way, not remotely did I build it or do all of that, but I had a say in putting the people in place, and we put good people in place there. And that means a lot to me because there's all sorts of good content at Burnley that never gets mentioned behind the scenes. Then the individual moments, obviously the first promotion, that'll live with me forever, not only the way it was occurred, but the last game against Wigan, we were absolutely fantastic. Deliver that kind of performance under that kind of pressure was incredibly good. The second promotion, because it was more business-like and it meant more in a way to the club business-wise. European season was heaven and hell of football because we knew we weren't geared up for it. But why can you turn it down? You're not going to turn it down, the chance to be in Europe. And it nearly cost us, of course. And then the second half of the season, we pulled that through. And also the development of lots of players, lots of good players who were bought in for not a lot of money and did great jobs, and they were sold for a lot of money. And so it's hard to pick what one. That's my point. Is there's a hard to pick, and of course the people in concern. I mean, the fans, the connection, the players, the staff. So many good people, so many unsung heroes of that period. And, I had to front it up as manager, but trust me, there's so many good people who were there, and so many people who unfortunately got removed. After when the new takeover came, which can happen. But incredibly good people there, and I enjoyed that, and I got to know a lot of them really well.
Yes. The big thing, Gaffer, I think you built a couple of times. You built bands of brothers, players who the fans had a real connection with, who were there for a bit of longevity about them, and that seems to be dying out the game a little bit now. We've had two promotions with Burnley with two different sides, and you almost get to start to like a player, and they're on the way again. Back then, we had a real solid core, and fans really bought into everything that was happening, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I mean, there's a lot of myths about the recruitment at that stage, but I've said it many times, and it kind of got hung around my neck, as you guys know, for a long time, which was, I don't like foreign players. And it was all nonsense. The fact is, the board said, can you get us players who are part of the earthiness of what was, Burnley? In a good way, that is, by the way, because I marvellous times there. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I mean, off the pitch with the people. But, there's an earthiness, an edge to it. And could you also get us players who can bond it together and sell on for money? So the English market at that time, you could get players from the Championship, the top end. I think the gap's got bigger, but you could get players from that who we could develop. You had the odd find from nowhere. You did have to buy a few as well, of course. But the recruitment side of it was really important to get people who actually understood maybe the area, the club, the people. And we did add in a smattering of, Stephen Defoe, who so unfortunate, Steve, when he got injured. What a player. To see him get injured, what a player. So we did add some of that in as we created almost a different feel to the side, or tried to. But there had to be some commonality with the signings. And you're right, Daz, we did buy signings who we felt would connect as a team and a unit, because we always felt the unit would be strong enough to protect us rather than the individuals, because we were never in a position to cherry pick the perfect individuals because of the money. So we had to go with the unit. And I agree, Daz. I mean, at the end, it fell away, and I think a few were past their sell-by date, and that's not going to go with them. They just got to the end of their time, and we couldn't renew and refresh because the club wouldn't put the money in because the sale was going through. But during that period, I'm super proud of the recruitment and how many players we got through and created not only a team that Daz is on about, a team and a connection with the fans, but also, players who, look at Barnsley now, 4 promotions. I mean, it was ridiculous. Got him for 400 grand, and they said, why are you signing him? And I said, well, we'll see, shall we? Tom Eaton, 0. Scotty Arfield, 0. Dave Jones, 0. I mean, them 4 players alone to marvel at, and you just look at some of them guys that we brought in, and we're just like, people sometimes forget that. Not fans, but the media and all that, And so there's so many things. But you're right, Daz. We very rarely had a side that wasn't connected as a unit and as people and players. Very rarely to be able to spell that.
You mentioned those 3 or 4 players, Sean. And was there a player that over your time that surprised you in a good way, that was better than you ever conceived them being?
Well, Ben would be an obvious one for what he achieved, and from going from a kind of steady Eddie left back to what he done. Scotty Arfield, amazing. Dave Jones, the original three: Dave Jones, Tommy Eaton, and Scotty Arfield. You can never question them because their growth as individuals in the club incredible. Dean Marnie, he was going all right, but then became a proper leader in what he did. Keno, the way Keno developed, looking a bit milky in his first year in the Prem and giving a few mistakes away, but then the next season became a Rolls Royce and, went on and sold for a fortune. I mean, I could mention there wasn't many who really you would say failed. There wasn't many. There was a few maybe had a bit of an iffy time. I mean, even look at Woody last season, manager playing how Woody needs to play, things like that. And I got heavily questioned on Woody because he cost 15 million quid. There weren't many really who got away. We had good spells with a lot of the players there. Trips is my favourite. I never like to mention it, obviously. But so many good players, so many good types. I think it's a really tough question because you can define it in many different ways. But I always go back to the original three, and I'll throw Barnes in with that because we bought him in that first season we got promoted. And for free, for zero, 450 the original fee for Barnsley, and the other three was zero. I mean, that's remarkable to get them players to do what they did and get us promoted, or play their part, and get them promoted. I think that's incredible.
But the model seems to have changed, though, hasn't it? There's players.
Like Vokesy, sorry, Chris, even like Vokesy, he's a bit of a, Vokes has been going on loan and working around the clubs, and then all of a sudden he became attached, in Vokesy and Duffo at his age, getting more out of Duffo, and he got more of himself. You know what I mean? So sorry, Chris, I'm just reflecting.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to sort of say, I mean, like you look at it now, I mean, there seems to be a lot of sort of data-driven signings, and there's a few that the managers worked with previously, that Scott had worked with Jade and Anthony and people like that. But when you were there, I mean, how much did you sort of look at data, or how much of it was you and your scouts sort of opinion?
That's another one of the popular misconceptions. It was like we were all, like throwing hay around the field and hoping it stuck on someone's head. Ridiculous. We had data coming out of our ears. It's just, you get for data, you need money. Not for the data, but once you've got the data and you know what players are the runners, everyone knows the runners and riders, by the way. Eventually, it's the ones who are going to stick the neck out and put the money in. Our kind of, our USP really used to be doing the background. So we did endless background on players right the way back to their youth teams, spoke to, I remember speaking to heads of like the learning department at clubs, from when they were 16, find out what kind of character they were and stuff like that. And I think I marvel at that, the depth of the not just the scouts, but the staff had, Woney, Tony Lachlan, later Steve Stone, Billy Mercer, putting ourselves out there, going and getting loads of background. We'd all worked in youth football. We'd all worked with, built our ways up the ladder. We had loads of connections everywhere. Various scouts came in and out, Martin Hodge and people like that, came in and helped and all played their part. And then we built more of an in-depth system. But in them original days, we were recruiting from our knowledge and our base and our background of what we'd done and going and doing a lot of graft, a lot of homework. And some fell your way. I mean, Scotty Arfield, a fellow called Brian Rice, big friend of mine, football friend of mine. I was apprentice at Forest when he was there, used to clean his boots, and brought him into various positions at clubs. And he said, look, go and get Scotty Arfield. He's out of contract. He's probably going to go to either Southend, I think it was, or Milton Keynes Dons. And he would go and get him, Gaffer. I'm telling you, he's infectious. He'll run, he'll work and all that. And we got him in pre-season. Sorry, we went, yeah, he'll do. And he was terrific. And so sometimes you get a little lucky twist, and you're not always expecting that. Dave Jones had been let down by, can't remember, I think it might have been Forest maybe. Been promised a contract, hadn't come through. So we got him in, Tom Eaton said, can he come in and have a few days here? Went away with us to Ireland, was terrific. I said, yeah, get him signed as quick as we can. So, some of them just come by your way a little bit by chance, but most of them were lots of background and lots of homework. And players we'd followed for a while, like Keno, I'd followed Keno for a while.
Yeah. You mentioned there about kind of towards the end, the club didn't want to give up the money. What were the conversations like in all of those transfer windows? Because I think from the outside, you look and you go, the total sum of this window is a second choice, third choice goalkeeper and Dale Stevens. That's the one that obviously people reflect on. Was there a real kind of trying to get blood out of a stone when you were dealing with?
No, trust me, that's the minute you work in Burnley. That's the minute that you got to get blood out of a stone. So it's not an ongoing thing. That's just an ongoing challenge, and that's across the Burnley way of life, which I've come to learn. Obviously, come to value it actually, but No, towards the end, Mike was, the club was trying to be sold and there was no input of cash, and that was frustrating. Of course it was, because inevitably it eroded the team. We needed an injection of cash at that time. We didn't get that. It wasn't Dale Stevens' fault. He was just a player we could just about, they'd just about, give me the money for. And I said, well, that ain't going to solve what we really need. So I knew then it was going to start being a tough challenge, and going on from there. Because eventually, without investment, you run out of time. You can't keep putting in minimal investment and getting maximum out. And we've done that for a long time. So, that's when the real sort of trouble started. When you're looking, going, well, how many times can we keep doing this with minimal investment? And it caught up with us in the end. But you got to remember, that's a long way down the road, from where it all started. So, I'm not going to cry it in.
Yeah. And how much of a change was it when ALK came in and suddenly you were getting Maxwell Cornet, Wout Weghorst? It almost felt like I don't know, from the outside felt like we're going to do things differently. How much of a say did you have in those transfers, and how much of that was, the new ownership perhaps wanting to make an impression with a couple of marquees, if you will?
No, the new ownership wanted to be involved. They wanted to be hands-on and start getting involved. And I tried to say, well, this has been running pretty well, so, we're happy to be involved, but, let us do our work. Let's do what we do, sort of thing. But, when new owners come in, people forget they're owners. You didn't tell them what they want. It's up to them what they decide to do. And, they wanted to start changing things, and that was a challenge, because they wanted to change inside and outside of the club, in the offices and the team, but it's their prerogative. It's their right to do so. There was no falling out. Everyone makes out there's a big falling out. There wasn't. I just said, look, I've been here and I've played my part in building it. So why not let's just work along the lines and we'll add to it, not start changing it all. But they wanted to start changing it all, and that's the way it goes. It's, you can only advise these people, but there's no falling out or all that. I can't be asked of all that, to be honest. I had a great time there, so I'm not going to start falling out over everything. But there was things I would have definitely done differently, if should I've been allowed to. But and not just signings. I mean, the whole, people who are in the club and started getting removed and all that sort of stuff. Part of me thinks, do you know what? It needed change. Not me necessarily, but I mean the whole thing. A part of me thinks, just add change slowly, which is my advice. I said, just slow steps. We don't have to sprint forward, just slow steps and let the club evolve slowly. But they had a different viewpoint and wanted to push, down the media route, as with that fantastic documentary, very deep. And then all the different things that came after that. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Give that a bit longer. Andrew's looking at me like, I'm not quite sure he's serious or not there, but Chris is seeing that guy.
I think we're used to that. We're used to that kind of comment. I was, we were going to come on perhaps to the documentary and your thoughts on that. Just in terms of when it did come to an end, did it come as a surprise? Because you'd got the new contract just literally, what was it, kind of 4 months before. It felt like you were ALK's man in the same way as perhaps 20 years previously. Stan Turner had the takeover with Barry Kilby and he became Kilby's man, even though he wasn't his choice. Did that come as a surprise to you on that? I think it was Good Friday, wasn't it? I went for a bike ride and all of a sudden I get a text message to say you've been potted.
Internally things were changing, not to my liking. I tried to make that clear, not in a dominant way, but just said, look, I don't think this is going to work. But as I said, you can only offer advice. But externally, you got to remember, I never shied away from results, and the results weren't good enough. It's simple as that. Not that we were magnificent. I knew the team had diluted, but I still felt we had a team that could get more results than we got. And your players, when you've been with players a long time, and the ones that I wanted to remove, not by the way because they were any problem at all, but the ones I felt were just getting to the end of their time, I couldn't change because the club wouldn't support it financially. So therefore, I know they're now beginning to change their views of us and what they need. And that eventually that's going to lead to trouble. And it did, and they just lose that edge. There's just an edge on players. They just lose it a bit. And that's all that happened. It was a timeline effect where some of the players ran out of what they could do or that edge that it takes. The club was changing internally, changing staff, changing ways of doing things. And it was just that situation that can occur in football. Change is a hard thing in football. To change things and keep going and winning is a hard thing, unless, of course, you take the shortcut, which is put mad amounts of money in, which they weren't doing at the time I was there. But like I said, there's no gripes, there's no moaning in my words. Yeah. These are all things, someone has to make calls on it. Someone has to make decisions. And, you know, the ALK group headed by Alan, they decided these decisions. They went, well, no, we want to do this. Back to your original question and the point. The only thing I was surprised at, it was the Friday and they're playing the Sunday, which I thought, well, why didn't you just do it last Monday and give everyone a chance, you know, to sort of get their head around it? We left the team in good shape, as I would. We left the staff that went in. We told them all the plans we'd done, all the training plans, all the set pieces, all the team that we thought should play. Left it in good order, spoke to the players and went, see you later, lads. Not for the most emotional man in the world, or not about my job. I just went, lads, it's been amazing. Thanks for what you've done. And the ones who knew they were over the edge, and the ones who knew they were beginning to let you down, they know. I mean, they're not bad people, but they know. Footballers know. They knew the ones. You know what I mean? They knew the ones who were just beginning to get the blame game going. And when footballers get the blame game going, you have to get them out. And I just couldn't get them out.
So you talk about how difficult money was to come by at times. Was there anyone that you were close to bringing in that didn't happen, and you were absolutely sort of devastated? I mean, we don't remember Greavesy was close for other reasons, wasn't he? But players like that.
The only one that I wasn't devastated in, but it is well documented, was Harry Kane. But it wasn't close by that. What happened was I saw him in Portugal, him and his family, and I got chatting with him. I'd always liked him. The lads at Millwall, when he was really young, always spoke really highly of him. And if you remember, the reason why this sounds, you know, like one of them stories, like we had magic eyes, we didn't. It's just he'd been on loan about 4 times. You know, I mean, it hadn't really happened for him. He'd been sub a bit, and he'd done a bit, and that really happened. But I saw him in holiday. I said, look, it's a long shot. Would you consider Burnley? He said, yeah, I just want to play. So we made a call. But at that time, I'll never forget, it was like Tim Sherwood, I think. And I rang him, and they wanted £7 million. And we were like, you know, the club went, well, can't be, you know, his record wasn't great and all that. I said, well, look, you know, this is the modern world. This is what you're going to have to pay. So the club were like, you know, can't quite do it and all that. So, you know, that's one that got away. But I mean, it wasn't close. I didn't, you know, we didn't have a meeting or anything with him. It wasn't close, but it was dead before you even get a chance, because the board at that time went, oh, no chance, you know, far too expensive. So you go, well, no, I mean, he's probably the one when you go, you know, what ifs of life. Yeah. But like I said, I'm not over dramatizing. It wasn't close, as in he's sitting in the office, nothing like that. There wasn't many. I don't think, anyway, in my opinion, there wasn't many awful mistakes. There was a few that didn't do as well. Ben Gibson didn't do as well, and I mean, I told Mike not to pay that money for him. Nothing against Ben, by the way. Good pro, good lad, and I'm pleased he's had a good career after. But, you know, at that time, paid far too much. I told Mike not to pay it, but Mike always thought he could get a deal in the last second of the transfer window, and it doesn't work like that. Anyway, got that one right. But he wasn't, I don't think he did badly. He was a great pro and stuff. So there weren't many, I don't think. I mean, you probably know, you guys and Daz, you know more about the history of it and all the details of it, unless you can throw things at me. But equally, there wasn't that many who got away, because usually they'd have gone before we got to the table, you know. Often we'd be in for a player early, and then as soon as the numbers went too high, the board went, no chance. So, you know, you can be there's endless lists of them, you know, endless ones you're in for. You didn't get close, but you got to the point of maybe, and then they just disappear because the money goes too high or the contract went too high. And there's an endless list of them.
Yeah.
You think, obviously, Gavin Gibbo, obviously, I mean, he was unfortunate in Tarky and Ben Mee in front of him,
exactly.
and Bamford in a similar boat, I suppose, as well. But
yeah, similar.
I'm trying to think. So who's in front of Bamford? Was it Andre still there then? And I'm trying to think when he came in.
I always get mixed up with years. It's where Daz is really good, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not.
Andre,
I'll point to Chris for these things, Gaffer. I'm hopeless at that.
Oh, well, Chris, sorry, Chris.
Volksy, Barnesy, Andre, I think. Yeah, but 2016, 17, maybe. Yeah.
Patrick's violin tutor as well, just in front of him, perhaps.
I find with that, Gaffer, you probably got better memory. You lived through it in that respect of bringing those players in and doing the deals. We're at the other end of it. We just see these players come and go quite a lot, and they all blend into one for me. The years pass you by.
No, I know what you mean. Because people often do that with me, right? And they go, "Oh, do you remember that year? And do you remember that?" And I get all of the years confused. I get some of the teams. I know the original team for obvious reason, because we didn't have many players. But a lot of the players, I get mixed up what years they came in, what years they went out. You know, when we beat this one. I mean, even the European, was the European like 17? Was it?
18.
18,
yeah. Right. 18, yeah. The first promotion was 13, wasn't it? I think. Was it 13 or 14? 14. Well, 13, 14.
13, 14, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and in between, I sort of get mixed up with which years were what and the points and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah.
Gaffer, get some tattoos of them on.
Yeah, no, yeah, of course. I'm a big tattoo man. Loads of tattoos on me. Apart from this one on my head where I fell over.
Like Barnesy. Have you seen
Yeah,
Barnesy?
of course.
The real rarity I find, Gaffer, is that you look back now, how many managers in this modern era have been at a club for 10 years? It just doesn't happen, does it? You know,
they're rarely, and I don't think it'll happen going forward now. I think the way football is now, I think it's highly unlikely that managers are there for that amount of time. But I had loads of times, I had loads of chances to leave, but I like the fact that, you know, the one big massive credit I can give to the board, because it wasn't the money side, but really strong, really aligned, never lost sight of the truth of the club. And that's a big, that sounds really simple, but that's a massive, massive credit to all of them, because I remember getting into Europe and there was no sort of like, well, now you got into Europe, you got to, you know, we've got to finish even higher. It was like, okay, that's amazing, but just keep us going, keep us in the Premier League, you know, keep working us, keep us right, keep the club's coffers full and keep the health of the club full. And it's a very realistic overview. So I never felt that weird thing where, goodness me, how are we going to better that? You know, it was always realism. And I look back on that, and that's a fantastic credit to all of the board, because it's not an easy thing when, you know, there are fan pockets, not so much at Burnley, I must say. The fans I thought were terrific and stood true to what it was. But there's still them pockets going, why don't we sign them? And why don't we sign them? And why don't we sign them? And why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? Not many, I must say, but, you know, little pockets. To be fair to them, they never flinched. Never flinched. Just steadfast to the truth of the club and the respect of the club and its history by safeguarding it. It was just a challenge because you could never get any money to do anything. Well, not real money, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just on Europe, I mean, you mentioned it there, and that realism. Obviously, kind of a lot of the players who perhaps were mainstays in the season when we got into seventh place were kind of bit part players in Europe. Was that about Premier League preservation? Was that about kind of, look, we'll give it a shot, but realistically, we ain't going to win the thing, and if it comes to the detriment of going down, it's not really been worth it? What was the kind of thinking behind the selection?
It's just the usual summary. It's like, oh, well, we've got into Europe, we're not buying anyone. Oh, that's great news then. I was like, okay. So then you just start again, don't you? And the players changed. We had a lot of injuries that summer, which is unusual. And I think the players, because of the grandeur of the season before, got a little bit kind of that edge, you know, that little edge where they're like, we'll be all right. You know, I don't need this and I don't need that. And we managed to sort of get a big shock for everyone at Christmas. We were at halfway point, 19 games, we had 12 points. And it was like, right. So I remember having a meeting with the players, called it in no uncertain terms, not screaming and shouting. Did a sort of bullet point list of, this is what we need to do, lads, because you've lost sight of it. And this is what makes us us. And then second half of the season, we're terrific. And, you know, had a really strong second half and got 28 points, and then got 40 points that season. So it went from 12 and 19 to 28 and 19, which is a hell of a turnaround. So, you know, credit to the players, because they listened and they went, yeah, okay, we've got it. Shoulders back and got on with it and never really looked back. I think who beat Tottenham at home? I think that started it. Yeah. We beat Tottenham home 2-1, I think. And then we sort of just started getting a bit of feel again. And then I think we beat West Ham or someone 2-0. And all of a sudden it just started changing a little bit. Yeah. And I can't remember how many, but in that 19, I don't think we lost many at the end of that season.
Yeah. And I think after that Everton game, was that when Tom Heaton came back in? I think Heats had been injured and he came back into the side. Is that kind of sliding doors moment you sometimes
it's
have
a
as a
funny
manager?
thing. I mean, Joe Hart it was, and he was terrific, because years later he told the story and he told it very, very truthfully, because I had him in and I said, Joe, you've actually been one of our best players, but you're the only player I haven't changed. So rather than give you a load of nonsense and lie to you, I'd prefer to just tell you the truth. So I'm going on a gut feeling and I'm going to put Tom back in. And of course he's really annoyed. He goes, how can you just do that on a gut feeling? I said, well, I'm just telling you the truth rather than give you a load of waffle from the manager. And to his credit, a few years later, he told exactly the story. And he told it really, really positively, not being an arse. He just went, the gaffer told me this. And at the time, I was angry and I was annoyed with it. But looking back, he told me the truth. He just told me the truth. You know, he wasn't having a go at me. He wasn't doing me down. He just said, look, I've got to change something. You're the only person I haven't changed. And then Tom goes in and we started winning, and, you know, really harsh on Joe. really harsh on him, but he took it like a man and always told the story truthfully. And that's the thing. A lot of players don't, you know what I mean? A lot of players don't tell the truth in their stories. And that can be really, really annoying, you know, when you go, that's not the truth. But players are like that, you know, and they try and change things to make it sound like they were right and you were wrong, and they try and change it to protect themselves. But that is annoying as a manager when they tell complete lies. There's been a few of them, I'll tell you.
It's probably not had that before. It'd have been fudged, wouldn't it? It'd been, well, you know, you're not quite doing as well as you can do, Joe, and this, you know.
Maybe I'm not going to start getting involved in other people's jobs and managers, because it's not easy. Management's not an easy thing. So I'm not going to question other people who dealt with him, but I just have a certain way of dealing with players, and I don't like to lie. I just tell them the truth. And, you know, you can have players who can deal with a really harsh, straightforward truth, and some need a soft truth, but it can still be the truth. So I just always tell them the truth. And that was one of the rare ones. We discuss it as staff. Should I say what you're saying, Chris? Should I go, you know, you've done well, but I didn't like that bit. I didn't like that bit. And I went, no, I'm going to tell him the truth. So I did. And it paid me back. Well, in a weird way, it paid me back, because years later he told the story, and he told it absolutely truthfully, and actually said something like, I've got respect for Sean Dyche because he told me the truth. So rather than turn it into a negative and make out that I was some kind of wrong 'un, he said, no. So, you know, that's when, and there's some funny ones as well, by the way. So Matej Vidra, because of his broken English, he couldn't understand that. I said to him, because I said, Matej, we just smile a bit more, play with a smile a bit more. So he goes in the papers and says, oh, the biggest tactical coaching I've been given is to smile more. Of course, that sounds ridiculous, but he's not a nasty fella. He just got the wrong. Yeah, he was trying to. He didn't get the point of smiling, but he couldn't understand play with a smile. So it delivered what he thought, like as if I'd just said it, like tactically, just smile and it'll all be all right.
It's a good job.
Smile at a corner and we'll get one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
well,
like
Stan
a funny...
would have said. Yeah, Stan would have said you need a chuckle in your boots.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have confused him even further.
Well, yeah, it was kind of like that. I was like, Matej, you always look like you're grimacing when you play. I said, smile a bit more and enjoy it. And he actually put it in an interview. I just went, how do you mean, Matej? What on earth? And he goes, oh, you said smile. And I went, yeah, but it wasn't tactical information. It's meant for you to bring it out yourself and actually play with a bit more love for the game and the performance. But anyways, sometimes it goes right, sometimes it goes wrong.
Just on kind of the managers who've come in since you left Turf Moor, I mean, kind of a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde.
Not even with the surface of my achievements. What are you talking about, man? Why are we going to talk about other managers? Goodness me, ridiculous.
Very kind of Jekyll and Hyde Kompany. Great first season, woeful second season, and Scott Parker coming in last season and getting that 100 points and still not getting the championship. How have you kind of assessed from afar the kind of the dealings, the kind of way they've shaped the club? I mean, obviously both managers getting, you know, carrying on that ridiculous championship record that you had at Turf Moor. But how would you assess the kind of last 3 seasons at Turf Moor?
Well, it's slightly different because I don't know the model inside of the club. Vincent did an obvious fantastic job, blew away the championship. They did spend a lot of money, but you've still got to spend it wisely, so there's no question on that. And then tried to do the same thing in the Championship, in the Premier League, which as I've spoke about, we weren't on mics, we weren't on record then, but the thing that frustrated me, not about Vincent, about the way football's gone, is the 3 clubs that season and 3 clubs last season that came up, all apparently did it by this way or that way. Let's just simplify by saying playing the right way. And I went down again. Well, what about staying up playing the wrong way? That's what I would view it as from the outside looking as a manager. So, but the argument for Vincent, and I make it clear, there was that story I did on TalkSport, and then people start saying I was having a go at him. No, I wasn't. He's a fantastic fella. It was nothing to do with him. I was suggesting that after having really low points level and spending a lot of money and then going to Bayern Munich, I was suggesting, how does that work? Because when I was manager, and I don't mean just at Burnley, I mean when I was an up-and-coming manager, you ain't getting a job unless you're winning, unless you're doing the job. And that's how football's beginning to change. Scott's slightly different character, we know that, different style, different way of doing things, but handled a big amount of players again, a big turnover. Yes, they've spent some money again. They've got some decent players. He's kept a few of the hardcore, done well, who was still there when I was there, and moulded it into a team now in a different way. I couldn't believe he didn't win Manager of the Year. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, it's ridiculous. The stats are ridiculous. And then he has to go out, not defend himself, but it was like, we bored our way to the title. I'm going, no, you didn't bore me, mate. I think it's fantastic to get that many points, to have that many clean sheets and concede that few goals. That's fantastic stuff. So, football surprises me now. I find it all a bit of a conundrum. Some of football, not really about. Well, even Burnley, we played at Burnley with Everton, won 2-0. We're 2-0 up, and the goalkeeper is rolling his foot over it and playing 1-2s from the back, and we're 2-0 up, right? And we're completely in control. And I'm looking at Wody going, oh, I thank God for that. I love this. I'm always shouting, yeah, keep playing it short. So I'm thinking, you ain't going to score in a million years here. So that's where football for me has changed. It's just like almost, and this is not about Burnley and Vincent and Scotty. This is like sort of almost deemed successful to play the right way and go down than the wrong way and stay up. And I find that a conundrum, a massive conundrum in modern football at the minute. And a bit, I just scratch my head on most of the time and just go, what's that all about?
Well, it's fair to say that you probably made a sort of model of that. Your mantra was making life uncomfortable for other teams.
Well, we had to in the origins of it. If we'd have tried to out football the Premier League at that time, and bearing in mind, yourself, all of you know, we had some good players. The first year we went up, we had Ingsley, and good footballers, Trips, and good footballers, and we played good football in the Championship. People sometimes forget that, but I just thought we ain't going to do that in the Premier League. So we're going to have to tough it out a little bit. Now, the first year it didn't work, of course, and we know that we didn't spend enough money, we didn't have a big enough squad. But when we went down and back up, we were better equipped. But we'd found a way of finding a way to win. And that's what football for me is still about, find a way to win. Now, of course, we'd all love to do it in a glorified way and it'll be marvellous. But not many teams can do that. And they try and do it and you think, what are you doing? You're going to go down. I was Ipswich this year and they did a fantastic job. They put a lot of money into the club and they're playing Arsenal. I know the guys, they're good guys, really good operators. And I said to them, you played Arsenal and they're absolutely flooding forward, running all over you, and you're trying to roll it out the back. And I'm going, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. And that's not doing it down. It's up to them. And it's up to modern football people to decide, and fans. But I'm in a pickle with it, me, because I look at it going, I don't know what I'm watching half time. I just look at these teams trying to play this tough football. Haven't got the players to do it. Not going to get a kick. Lose every week. But somehow kind of, not being lauded, but this kind of, but it's their philosophy. Right, okay. How about the philosophy being winning a bit more? Get some points on the board. How about that one? Does anyone ever bring that up anymore? Because I don't think they do. No, really don't. I don't think anyone says it. Does anyone just go, after the game, where's your philosophy? Does anyone go, what are you doing with your philosophy, mate? Any danger of winning? I can't work that out.
Do you think there was a reaction? Yeah, there was almost a reaction to what you did in that. You'd run over teams, and then all of a sudden, the Spurs and the Cities and they were pressing harder and more prolonged, and the centre half seemed to get more physical as well. They were bringing in more to combat that sort of side of things. They could play as well.
Yeah, but you know yourself though, Chris. You got to remember there was loads of myths of that time, but I certainly wasn't a dispeller. And they used to go, Burnley tough side. No, we weren't. Well, I think one year we were embarrassed because we were top of the Fair Play League. I went, that's got to change, lads. I ain't having that. It's ridiculous. Nearly got into Europe over fair play or some mad nonsense. You know what I mean? But there was only 1 year, I think, we were in the top 5 or whatever for points on bookings and sendings off. They used to go, this tough team, the dirty and all that nonsense. What are you talking about, dirty? I mean, there's no dirty in it. It's called competitive. There was never, when did you see a Burnley player top someone? Or when did you see someone, hurt someone? Or when did you see... Honestly, but I wasn't going to dispel that myth, though. I was quite happy with it.
You didn't, but once someone like Jurgen Klopp accuses you of doing that, that becomes a thing, doesn't it? And that sticks.
Yeah, of course. But that's, look, managers have their own styles. Mine was, and Daz, we used to talk about this a lot. I'd never questioned other managers. Didn't question their styles, didn't question their team styles, because I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. They can do what they want to do to try and win a game. I can do what I want to do to try and win a game. So I didn't get involved in that. That's fair, Daz. We used to talk about that with the media a lot, didn't we? And I stuck to it. Very, very rarely you find me questioning the opposition manager or their style of play. I did make a joke once. I said, we got smashed by Man City, as we always seem to do, at their place. And afterwards they said, I said, well, it's completely unfair. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, they played loads of 10-yard passes. I think they had 600 passes. It's a disgrace. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And it was just a play on the fact they always said, we play long ball and you only had this many passes. I said, well, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't be allowed to have all them high quality players playing 10-yard passes. They didn't really get it. The press didn't really get it. I was only joking, but
it's when they start bringing, they start bringing De Bruyne and Grealish on when you're 5-0 down, aren't they?
It's hilarious, yeah. It was hilarious. You used to look. I remember years and years ago we played him once. Frank Lampard was coming. I went, do me a favour, Frank. And he just looked at him. I went, come on. As if to say, not you as well. Oh, come on. It was just almost written that he comes on the scores. You know what I mean? I was like, really? Yeah. And yet, weirdly, against them, at home, it was always tight affairs and awkward affairs. You know what I mean? Not necessarily always scoreline. Well, though most scorelines were, but away, it was in weird places. We just couldn't get, the team just couldn't get their heads around it, away there. It's rare. Some of them teams do it. And yet, weirdly, Old Trafford always fancied us with a chance. Liverpool always fancied us with a chance. Chelsea always fancied us with a chance. Not so much Arsenal. Not so much Man City. Well, definitely not Man City. So it's weird. I think sometimes it does get in the old psyche of the team a little bit and the players. You know what I mean?
You got results against them all, but is there one game in particular that you're most proud of from a tactical point of view, where you've everything's sort of come off? I mean, remember beating Liverpool 2-0 at home with the early goals and whatever it was.
2-0 at home, I think. Is that not? I think that's still the lowest percentage of possession to win in the Premier League. I think.
Could well be.
I think so. But yeah, tactically, I was really pleased with that. Well, this sounds strange, right? But we lost Old Trafford 3-1, I think. But tactically, we were absolutely terrific. And you remember, but we should have at least drawn, if not won. So there was that one.
Where Ingsy scored with the
Chelsea once at home. Chelsea once at home. We it sounds mad, but it was only 0-0. But that was when they were flying to win the title, and they had the three at the back, and we locked it down, and that was a really good one. I really enjoyed it. Liverpool away, of course, to break their 68 games or whatever. Finally got a win from what Barnsley described as a goal, but I think it still was off their defender. Finally got a win at the Emirates. I don't know. I don't really like to pontificate about tactics, but there was a few when we got it, I would say, more right than wrong, and a few where we used what we could do to really be awkward. And the win away at Old Trafford, I thought was excellent. When Jay Rotter caught a screamer, do you remember it dropped off the front and he smashed it in the corner? Yeah. I thought we were terrific that day, the whole team. I think we used to, I will say, and I'm not defending myself now, but I think we used to get done down a little bit. Tactically at that time, because it was, it was like, well, they'd play rough and tumble. Go, no, there's a bit more to it than that, I can assure you. And Everton, funny enough, Everton away. I don't remember when Jeff scored the goal after all the passes.
Yeah, 40-odd passes.
I did like that one, though, because I shouldn't have said this. Everyone said to me, you should have left it as a myth, but I did enjoy the season we got to Europe because they said, all the pundits said, they're playing a lot more football this year. And the stats were something like, I think we had 3 more passes on average than the year before.
All right.
But I used to love it. So at the end of the season, I went out and said, by the way, all these pundits tell us, no, we're not. Because it was really annoying me because they used to batter us before that about playing long ball. I went, no, we're not playing loads of passes. We're not playing more fluidly. You've just made it up, and that's because we're winning games.
The perception is Defoe in midfield and Brady and
of course.
Like that, and that's what,
perception's everything now in football. I'm not even sure ever people even bother with the facts anymore. They just make something up and throw it out there and it sounds tactically right. And I go, yeah, that's right.
If Scott Parker was to give you a call this week, Sean, and say, right, you've kept this, you've kept Burnley in the Premier League for as long as you did that big run, unprecedented really for a club this size. What 3 things do I have to do to ensure that come May we're still in the Premier League? What would you advise to Scott Parker be? And I know, it's hypothetical because you're not that kind of guy.
I'm not going to start advising other managers. It's up to him what he does, and he's done a good job so far. In my opinion, it's going to be tough for all the teams that come up. My way of working would be strong, fit, and organised. I'm not telling Scott to do that or any other manager. My thoughts when you go into the Premier League, the minimum you should be is strong, fit, and organised, in my opinion. Because if you're not going to be doing that, you're going to find it really tough. If you think you're going to outplay people, it's unlikely. If you think you're going to out-physical teams now in the Premier League, it's unlikely. So therefore, it's got to be a collective. But that's not advice, and not advising any other managers, because when I do these podcasts, you do realize people lift things and then batter me about it. My way of working, it'd be strong, fit, and organised. That'd be the first things I'd be looking at.
They've got stronger, fitter, and more organised.
Have they got stronger and fitter
Well,
and
yeah,
more
yeah,
organised?
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think the whole of football
Yeah.
adds on. It's not as marked as what you think. You know, it does move, but it changes as well. So you'll have things like overall distance might come lower, high speed running, and the short distance might go higher. So it does fluctuate, but generally over time spells. To simplify it, it's not literally 5 years, but imagine 5 years chunks. Generally, it moves forward a bit, but it's not always huge, but it does move forward a bit. But the game changes. So if you've got shorter style of football, which most of the Premier League do now, therefore it's short style of running. So therefore there's a lot more short distance, bursts and short distance pressing. So that's changed. So therefore it skews the stats physically. Then with the ball, it skews the stats because the one that drives me mad is, but we had the ball, 70% of the time. You're like, yeah, but you mostly passed it backwards, sideways, and back to your keeper. That one drives me utterly mad because it's nonsensical. Efforts on goal, quality of efforts on goal, quality of getting the ball forward into the right areas. That's more my style. Of stats, that is. But the stats do change. They don't change as much as you think. You still need a certain. Graham Taylor used to have a stat about shots on goal. On target, sorry. You still need to hit so many shots on target over a season to get so many goals, or roughly speaking. So, stats, you keep an eye on them, and stats are there for use, and they are used. But I was never a zealot to them. I just like to know what they were. And sometimes you dispel the myths with them. We used to have it at Burnley a lot. Oh, you don't do this, you don't do that. And I said, well, it's funny. How come? I used to say about this, I say, how come we're long ball, but my two centre-halves have got the most headers in the Premier League? So I said, how does that work then? Because someone must be kicking it long, or someone must be putting it in the box, someone must be kicking it in the air. That's how they got the most headers in the Premier League. I could never work that one out. So there are a few myth busters, and things where I go, that don't quite work out.
Yeah. Are you proud of the fact, just talking about, organisation and minimum requirement, maximum effort, obviously a lot of that stuff that you integrated into the training ground, one of the first things Vincent said is we're not making any changes to, the mottos and the kind of the quotes and the drives that you've got at the training ground. And I think Scott Parker, again, when he came in, said, why would you want to move away from that? Is there a sense of pride for you in terms of that?
I wish I would have stupid me.
Do you feel a sense of pride in that?
No, there were things I believed in. They were sayings that I used to use, and they become, with the original groups, they started, I call it sticky words and sticky sayings. So once they get entwined with the collective nature of the club, and I thought they did, some of it does encapsulate the area, I felt, and I wanted to bond the fans to the area and the truth of the club. Now it's changed, and that's fine. I'm not questioning it. The culture and the way it works now has changed. But at that time, I wanted a bond, what would give the fans, give the team an inside feeling of what the fans want. And it started with sweat on the shirt. In my first ever press conference, I said, I'm not guarantee you're going to be brilliant football. I'm not going to tell you you're going to win every week. What I will give you is a side that puts sweat on the shirt. They will wear that shirt pride and they will be putting sweat on the shirt. And it sort of grew out of that. And then some of the sayings that I brought in and things we'd talk about at the office, not always mine, but got quite a few. Well, them ones are mine, legs, hearts and minds. I did that on my pro licence because I believed in it. Minimum requirement, maximum effort. I used to say that to the youth team at Watford because I believed in it. I used to say it to my own son. So these are things that sort of became quite organically grown. And then when we got to the training ground idea, the new training ground, I said, well, let's give it some signage. Let's give it a feel. So when players, the moment they come in, they can almost sense the, what it is type thing, what it means to be here. And I thought the company did a really good job. I haven't been up there in years, obviously, but they tell me it's still there and it's still the same brand, or, roughly speaking, not exactly the same, but roughly speaking, the same branding. But I didn't, you got to remember that I'm not looking at it, I'm not really precious about it. So I wouldn't, if they changed it all, that's up to them. It's no drama to me. I go, all right, fair enough. So it's not like I can sit there going, oh, they're all mine, It's just, I just
live, laugh in the canteen again or something like that.
I mean, some of the internal stuff, we put some would be serious, some would be jokes. And we decided to put quotes up from players and stuff like that rather than the management and the staff and all that. And some historic quotes from players, some few, younger players, older players. And we just started sort of playing around with it and getting a feel. That was the key thing, to get that sense of an environment that when you come in here, you're almost subliminally hit with what is expected. Yeah, before you even do anything, this is expected. Legs, hearts, and minds, they've all got to be intact, and the minimum requirement is maximum effort. So before you even think of anything else, then they're already on show. And that was kind of the thought about it, that subliminal hit when you just get it all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we'll end with this, I think, but Daz says you've got quite an interesting Oasis at Nebworth story, which you may be able to share with us. That involves a limousine and some mud, perhaps, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't quite mud, but it's a truth about the limousine. I was telling someone about this the other day, because before the concert, they asked me to do something for BBC Radio, BBC Wales, sorry, with Johnny Owen, who's a mate of mine, him and Vicky McClure. So we went on there, and they were saying, "Oh, did you go to Nebworth?" No, I said my last gig was Nebworth. Said Stuart Pearce organised it, and Forrest had been on tour. So I was the first pickup with Macca in Nottingham, who hadn't gone on the tour. So we got in the limo, go down to, I think it was, I got a thing, it was a bit of a pain. I think it was Birmingham. I think we had to go to Birmingham Airport, pick the players up, the ones who were coming, literally off the tour. They had to get the jeans on. They went straight across Nebworth, but it says straight across, a long bloody way. And so I swear, imagine a limo, I don't know, even back then, let's say it held 8. I think there must have been 12 of us in there. And there's beers and everything going off and just banter and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, we get across to Nebworth. So as we're going in, people are banging on the limo, going, "Give us a good gig, lad," and all that. That's what it was. And we were going, "Hey." So Pierce is going, "Keep the windows shut, lads. No one fucking knows it's us." You know what I mean? So we just kept the windows shut, everyone banging on the windows and all that. "Hey, give us a good gig, lads." As it happens, they helicoptered in, by the way, the actual band. But no, we had a fantastic day. The other thing that I'll never forget, me and Woney were talking, because Woney come down to the Oasis gig me the other night. And we were chatting because he was there, obviously. And you know what I forgot? Because that was 96, and that was when Pierce, if you remember, scored the penalty and became sort of dispelled the myths of the past. I've never seen a reaction like it. We got out of the limo, so we have to walk. We got as close as we could, and we had to walk up. And I'm not kidding, there was like thousands of fans just turning around, just shouting "Psycho." Bearing in mind, like Manic Street Preachers are on. He was that big then; it was just bizarre. And it was honestly, it was like walking with a rock star. It was weird. And I remember, because we knew him, and I was like, "What on earth going on?" Because that had gone so powerfully across the country about him scoring and stuff. And he was massive at that time. So I can't
introduced
forget
the Sex Pistols, didn't he? He introduced the Sex Pistols at that summer, didn't he?
Which he's a huge fan of punk. So to him, that was a massive deal. You know what I mean? He still is. I mean, I still see him. We still go to gigs. He invited me to Green Day the other day, but I'd already promised someone I was going to watch the Bootleg Beatles, believe it or not. They were really good, by the way.
Not Oasis, really, if anyone's...
Exactly. I've seen them as well. And the Clone Roses, Gav, who's lead singer of the Clone Roses, I know them lads. So, Piercy went to watch Green Day the other day. And like I said, I'd already made plans, so I couldn't go. But no, Piercy still does loads and loads of gigs. And I try and catch up with him now and again. So great fella that he is. Here's a funny Stuart Pearce story, actually. He won't mind me telling you this, because it's a good story. So me and the staff, right, at Burnley and at Everton, because obviously similar staff, now and again he'd ring in the mornings at the morning meeting. So I used to go, "Right, lads, get ready." So when I ask this, when I answer it, just go, "Psycho, psycho, psycho." So we used to answer the phone, shouting that right down the phone. He used to go, "You fucking muppets." So anyway, so I was in Nottingham after I come out of Everton. So the phone goes on like a Friday night about 7:30, and it was Pierce, and I thought, "Hey." So I opened it, and everyone, all the crowd, right, it was doing a Q&A in front of 700 people. They all started singing "Psycho, psycho, psycho," and he just put the phone down. I mean, that's genius. I just went to say, so as he put the phone down, I went to say, "You fuck," and it went ding. So he basically must have told the audience, 700 people, the story, and he said, "Right, I'm going to ring Dyche, and if he answers, start singing Psycho." So they did. I thought, fair play to him. That was good.
Definitely. And what's next for you then, Sean? Summer full of gigs, a bit more golf. What's the next couple of weeks look like?
Looking at some media stuff that might be quite interesting. And obviously, wait and see what happens with football. I don't think there's anything in the pipeline for now. We know the witching season will come again. It always does. Just just a bit of quality time. Really, I've quite enjoyed having some time, some downtime. It's really intense. I mean, all jobs are intense, but Evans, at the end, it was really heavy lifting, and and it definitely gives you that like. But there was a lot of good work done there, so I'm very proud of the work we've done there. Yeah. Coming out of there, spending a bit of me time, really, a bit of quality time, and like you say, stuff that I enjoy. Played a bit of golf. I go down the gym. I do like a couple of beers at a weekend. I like a gig. Time with the kids and that when you can. I mean, that's they're older now, so that's different. I just sort of piecing it all together, and then working as well. Doing like I say, all kinds of different things. It's not just. I've quite enjoyed that actually. Lots of different media stuff, but not the thing that you imagine is just when you sit there and go. The Club World Cup, because I got offered that and I went, no thanks. So, some of that, when I'm not obsessed with football at the moment, I just, I keep my eye on things. But it's like someone saying the other day, what about all these transfers? I went, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the transfers. I don't know whether you think my whole life is just staring at Sky Sports every day, but that doesn't happen. So, yeah, just a mixed bag, really. But, yeah, quite a lot on the media thing, which I'm just looking at now, social media, people coming to me about social media and stuff like that. So I'm just fanning my way through that, just having quite a lot of meetings in London at the minute about possibles and all that sort of stuff.
Excellent. Well, we wish you all the best, and yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Daz and Chris, I don't mean that weirdly, Andrew, but these guys have been for a long time, especially Daz, of course. So
see you later. Thank you. Let's catch up.
Yeah, you take care, all right?
Well, appreciate that.
Cheers, everyone.
Take care.
Monday countdown.
Bodie's playing amazing.